embrace people of this learn to serve one another, love our neighbors, people of peace and positive vibration. Once again, all together. Prayer. Father, art in heaven, be thy kingdom come. Will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 23rd of May, 2023 to be deferred. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
The questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by Your Honor. Messages from Her Excellency the President. Petitions. Papers. You have to revert. Government notices. Private members' notices. Notices of questions. Reports from select committees. First reading of bills. Statements by ministers. Congratulatory and/or obituary speeches. Personal explanations. Motions for leave of absence or replies to questions. Notice of motions for adjournment at House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
The question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Is that it? Order number 5, sir. Government business.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 5. In the name of the Honourable Minister of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, to move the passing of a resolution that the Parliament of Barbados take note of the Green Paper on the national sports policy.
On.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to move the passing of a resolution that the Parliament of Barbados take note of the Green Paper on the national sports policy. Mr. Speaker, before I get to the national sports policy, the Green Paper, as usual, I want to say thank you to those persons in the constituency of St. John that provided an opportunity for me to serve. Over the last couple of years, Mr. Speaker, there's been this notion that not a lot has been happening in sports. And before I get to the Green Paper, I just want to share from my notes a few items that are happening on the landscape in this country as it relates to sports. Mr. Speaker, you, just like I, have persons in our constituency with skills in athletics, basketball. I know you have a strong basketball program in your constituency. For years, I have been battling the marshal at that level. And one of the things, Mr. Speaker, that presented itself on taking up my post at the ministry is the fact that, and I've mentioned this before, the SATs in the States are something that all of our athletes who are trying to gain a scholarship must prepare for in order to get into those colleges in the States. And we had a situation where it became almost impossible for persons, some single mothers, for their children to pay $400 and $600 to source that particular tutoring so that they can pass the SATs. And the ministry took it upon itself, through the team at the ministry, to ensure that we now own the SAT program for those persons who cannot afford. And we would have started in January with a cohort of, I believe, 20 or 22 persons who would have now completed that first one, and we're looking to go again. Mr. Speaker, the reality is, and I was in the ministry for 10 years, and the development of sports in this country revolve around two things on this island. One, I think it was the under-17 or the under-19 football competition at constituency level. And the second thing, Mr. Speaker, was the Silver Hill Road Tennis Tournament. But I go on in relation to those things that are happening in sports. We have started the process of rolling out community gyms, Mr. Speaker. And we have now completed the work at 4 locations. And this is an opportunity to get communities active, to ensure that we can contribute to the process of reducing the NCDs that are impacting us. And as we go on, it is expected, Mr. Speaker, that every single constituency will have one of these community gyms. The elderly swim program, I know that this year is the year of the youth, but we have had in excess of 600 persons participating in that swim program at the beach at Brown Beach, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that is embedded in the policy, and one of the things that I want to mention here again that is happening even before the policy, we have started the process of engaging and training up community coaches to go to the communities all across this country to ensure that we have activities at those playing fields, Mr. Speaker, that we are responsible for. And we have started the process with having 20 football coaches trained, and these are coaches that are being asked to ply their trade outside of what is happening at the National Sports Council. Mr. Speaker, for the first time in this country, a government would have made $3 million available to sports. For the first time in this country, every single national federation will benefit from $20,000 for developmental purposes in their particular organization. Mr. Speaker, I move on. We have just provided land at the gymnasium complex for archery to ensure that they have a safe location to engage in that particular sport. So we have provided the location, and I believe they have started the process of using that location at the complex. The refurbishment of the gym at the Garfield Sobers complex. And this gym is in place for those same federations and those persons who are interested in training and getting involved in strength and conditioning. We have made it possible for all of the persons who come under the national federations to go to the location. Mr. Speaker, we have painted more than 200 road tennis courts across the island on request or by believing that we can have those courts at locations. We have trained, in addition to 20 groundsmen, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that those same playing fields that are managed by the Sports Council are well served by those groundsmen. Not only are we asking them to contribute as far as that is concerned, but we have provided a vocational skill that these guys can go to any entity on this island to take care of the lawns and the grounds at businesses and private homes. It was started it stopped. But we're pleased today, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that the Glebe Pavilion is now completed along with a hard court at that location. And every morning and evening I pass, the facility is being used by youngsters from within the constituency of St. George North. For the first time again, Mr. Speaker, on this island, we have used line technology when we last staged the Barbados Road Tennis Invitational at the gym complex. Never before have we used line technology in any of the sports. Mr. Speaker, the Sports Council is now in possession of 6 cameras. 6 cameras that our sports, because if it is our quest to ensure that we reach the international level, things like being able to videotape practice sessions, practice games, to do video analysis for those coaches who are involved in the process, we have now gone a step further by making those 6 cameras available to all the national federations who would want to do so. And this is something, Mr. Speaker, that is necessary, because if we're going to remain on the cutting edge, then we must catch up with what is happening in the international sphere in terms of how we treat to that. There's a portal, Mr. Speaker, at the National Sports Council. And what do I mean? If you have a player, Mr. Speaker, in Station Hill, who is at the level that he can gain a scholarship, and it is impossible for him to travel, for the coaches to see him perform, or it is impossible for the coach to come here, we now have the facility that we can use one of those same cameras to do some video recording and place it on the portal so that the coaches of Island can see what is going on. Mr. Speaker, I am tempted, really tempted to agree now more so than ever with the former member for St. Lucie that 5 is way more than 10 in relation to the development of sports in this country. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that we have been hearing constantly, and it is embedded within the sports policy, that our indigenous sports, road tennis, should have a level of prominence on the island, and that we should try as much as possible to see how far we can push road tennis. And we've heard constantly that it is going absolutely nowhere. Mr. Speaker, today I want to say to you that in less than a month, we will be launching the International Road Tennis Federation here in Barbados. We have identified the directors. We have the constitution in place. It is just, like I said, a matter of snagging, so to speak, and we will be able to launch the International Road Tennis Federation. And we have gone far and wide. We are exploring all of the options in relation to getting this not only in the Caribbean, but in North America. We're trying to get this as well as far as Africa. We have restarted, or it will be restarted this year, the Cigar Field Sobers Tournament. And this was dormant, Mr. Speaker, for a while. And we believe that it was necessary to re-engage. We had a meeting with our national hero, and he readily agreed that we should proceed in relation to this. One of the things, Mr. Speaker, that is the elephant in the room, and you constantly hear about it, is the National Stadium, the redevelopment of the National Stadium. And every time that our athletes travel and there's success, then you hear persons indicating we need a national stadium. Mr. Speaker, I want a national stadium too. I was at my peer's son's christening, and I could swear, Mr. Speaker, that when I had him in my arms, he said, "Minister, we need a national stadium." Everybody wants a national stadium. But the truth is that a national stadium will not happen next week. There's a process, Mr. Speaker, and we are engaging on a weekly basis with the People's Republic of China. We are engaging with their team to ensure that we can have our national stadium with some speed. The process is continuing. We're doing what is necessary. Mr. Speaker, in an effort to ensure that our playing fields are active, to ensure that we have persons on the playing fields across this island, we have embarked on an extensive lighting program that will see every single playing field in this island flooded with lights to ensure that we have that. Yes, we had a shortage. I'm told by my team at the ministry that the lights are actually in the port. So in quick time, we will have a situation where those lights are affixed to our locations. In recent times, Mr. Speaker, it was mentioned that we will be embarking on developing 11 mini stadia, one in every constituency, every parish, and plans are in train. We have started the process of measuring locations. We have had discussions with the National Conservation Commission in relation to plants that would be required in order, Mr. Speaker, to treat to that particular initiative. So, Mr. Speaker, when I just went through 18 things that would have happened in the last 5 years, in the latter part of the last year and a half, at the Ministry of Sports, to ensure that what we are doing in sports is not a case where, as mentioned oftentimes, that government is making sport at sports. We have moved past that, and clearly, from what I have identified, it is now something that should not be said. The Green Paper, Mr. Speaker. Now, this Green Paper is, in essence, our roadmap in terms of how we treat to sports going forward in this country. And the vision to elevate sports as a central pillar of Barbadian national identity, social development, and economic prosperity by 2030. Mr. Speaker, for so many years, like I said, I sat in the ministry and watched as practically nothing was done for sports, even less for our athletes and teams. But now we have the national sports policy that it is expected, like I said, to ensure that a whole range of things as it relates to sports unfold in this country. And I'm sure that the good people in the constituency of St. John will be pleased because they too will benefit from all that is happening through this particular initiative. Building a more active community. And I've mentioned before that we have started the process of the community coaches, and this is one of the key concepts inside of the document. And one of the things that we're looking to do is to build sports at a grassroots level, because if we can have sports being played in every single corner in this island, then we have a much larger population to draw from in relation to how persons treat to sport. Sports for community development. And I mentioned your area, Mr. Speaker, and I can think of several others, including mine at one point in time when I was involved in the process, where sports is able to move and to lift communities to a level of pride where they support homegrown teams. And Station Hill Cavaliers has been a staple in basketball for many, many years. I believe your coach, who happened to be a marshal, is probably one of the most winningest coaches inside of that particular competition. Yes, we had our battles, but Station Hill Cavaliers is known for that. And we can go around the country, Mr. Speaker, and mention names of teams that represented community that had strong following as a result of their success. One can, in football, one would mention Nascimento from St. Andrew. And when they were playing, you know that a whole truck load and buses were coming to support that particular team. And all around this country, teams that are dotted in different communities will have that type of support. So sports for community development is one of the areas, Mr. Speaker, that we're pushing, and we're pushing that in a heavy, heavy way. Physical education, sports and the educational system. Mr. Speaker, we have been struggling at the National Sports Council year after year to try to get teachers and head teachers involved in the process of embracing sports within the school system. Too often, our coaches return indicating that they were not able to complete tasks because teachers were not interested in having their children come out to participate in sports. And we believe that to have our youngsters involved in the process is beneficial at several levels. One, the fact that they're active. Two, they're able to function as a team. And three, we're looking, Mr. Speaker, from the health perspective where we have so many of our youngsters who are obese. This is an opportunity to change that. So we are pushing this, and you will hear that we're looking to make it almost mandatory through legislation where all the schools from nursery to secondary participate in sporting activities. One of the things in this particular policy that is dear to all of us is the fact that sports, we will now embrace persons with disabilities. And it is expected, Mr. Speaker, that this would not be a token situation, but this would be a case where all of those persons who are involved in sports, as far as the disability community is concerned, that plans will be in train to make sure that one, we have coaches, and two, access to the necessary sports that they're interested in is something that will become a norm, because we believe in being inclusive, and hence those persons with disabilities should not be marginalized as a result of not being able to afford an opportunity to participate. Sports, Mr. Speaker, to benefit those who are the juvenile detainees. And why? We are not absolutely sure that there's a structured program for those persons who are involved in the penal situation. Of course, we're talking, like I said, about the juveniles, those who are within our target age. And we believe that it is necessary now to set plans in place that when those persons exit the system, or even as they're within the system, that we can provide an opportunity for them to participate in some type of sporting activity, Mr. Speaker. Again, this is beneficial because it allows them to have that release, so to speak, by being engaged in a particular discipline. And we will be doing what is necessary to ensure that we can either have coaches go in, or we can have mentors go in, and as soon as persons are exiting the system, then we can get them involved in some type of sporting activity. And I'm thinking that we will probably start the process by having someone go in so that it is meaningful to them. Intellectual property and sports. And Mr. Speaker, I mentioned earlier what we're doing in relation to our own road tennis. We have identified the logos that we are going to have registered. I believe there are 4 logos that we have identified, 4 logos that we have identified for this particular discipline. Development of a high-performance system. And we intend to work in concert with the University of the West Indies. We intend to ensure that we can have our own equipment made available. I know right now we're exploring the possibility of purchasing one set of equipment to ensure that we have best practices. It is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that year after year our athletes are competing And dare I say, they're completing in a situation where maybe I can say the playing field is not level. And why do I say that? Because I don't think on island that they're benefiting enough from the latest in technology as it relates to sports. And if we are to ensure that we have best results, then, Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely necessary for us to ensure that we remain on the cutting edge, that we train up our coaches to a level that they're world class, because it is impossible to have a world class athlete without a world class coach. And we're moving to ensure that that is something that is happening. Mr. Speaker, the policy speaks to us monetizing cricket, because cricket is almost second nature in this country. We, more than any other country, would have had success at the regional and international level in relation to those persons who ply their trade in cricket. And one of the things that the policy is identifying is the fact that cricket will have a prominent place in terms of how we treat the cricket, how we can use the names of some of our former players to ensure that we can make money from the process all around. And it is evident that the Cigar Field tournament is one such initiative, because we are engaging in sports tourism when we involve teams that are coming to Barbados. I believe it is now about 8 registered teams that are involved in the process coming here this year to participate in the restart of that particular sport. 16 disciplines, Mr. Speaker, were identified for primary focus. And it is not to say that the other disciplines that are involved on the island are being jettisoned. It is just that these are the ones, Mr. Speaker, that have a kind of mass following in relation to the particular discipline. And I will go through them one by one, Mr. Speaker. Basketball is a mass sport. Only this morning on the news, I heard that the National Sports Council games, the under 16, I believe, will be played this evening at a couple of locations. And on that point, Mr. Speaker, we keep hearing again these, if I can use the word, foolish comments about what not the Sports Council is doing. And I beg, not only because I'm the minister, but we have a core of persons at the National Sports Council that are doing every single thing to move sports forward. And we're trying our best to absolutely do what is necessary to engage our youngsters and move them to the next level. Let me give you an example of when I mentioned the foolishness, Mr. Speaker. We brought back the Herman Griffith tournament, I believe it was last year, and there was a decision taken by the coaches and management of the National Sports Council to use a softball. And there was a range of criticism with doing things backward. It is a backward step to introduce softball after so many years of playing hardball cricket. The reality is that when our coaches went to the schools, they identified that these youngsters, after a 2.5-year or so break from the sport, the hand-eye coordination was not the best. And it could be problematic for those guys who are catching balls coming out of the air. So hence, the decision was taken to ease back into this competition by using softball. But we had a whole range of criticisms about using the softball being a backward step. I want, Mr. Speaker, to salute the coaches and the team at the National Sports Council for what they continue to do year after year to push sports, Mr. Speaker. And if you listen to the news, you will hear periodically that this under 19, this under 16 competition in hockey, in basketball, a whole range of disciplines are being run by the National Sports Council. Can we do better? Yes, we can. Will we do better? Of course we can. And we shall. Boxing, Mr. Speaker, I believe there's a need for us to uncover a couple Tysons in this country. And hence, we are looking to embark on a program that will see us focus on boxing to try to attract some of those youngsters who have energy to spend, and we are hoping that we can move them into boxing. Chess is another area that we're trying to grow, Mr. Speaker, and this is one of the primary focus in the document. Cricket is a natural thing, draft, football, netball, of course, road tennis, swimming, track and field, volleyball, tennis, the lawn tennis, surfing, motorsports, weightlifting, and hockey. 16 areas, Mr. Speaker. 16 disciplines were earmarked for special focus, and we will be doing what is necessary to ensure that we can build out these particular disciplines during the passage of time. We're an island, Mr. Speaker. We are an island. And beach culture and sports is one of the areas that we're now looking to see how best that we can, again, expand what is happening in relation to beach sports. We're looking at locations to house at least 2 beach volleyball courts to ensure that not only is it a situation where we will be hoping to hype those particular sports, but we are expecting, Mr. Speaker, that with the passage of time, that we should be able to host a number of tournaments at locations where we have these facilities set up. And we're looking at adjacent to Griner Highway, we're also looking at a spot up Wildy to build out the beach culture as it relates to those particular disciplines. Mr. Speaker, incentives and concessions. And all of us in this room are aware that some years ago, the Democratic Labour Party decided that it was not their business to grant concessions to persons who are involved in sports. And when I say to you, Mr. Speaker, that the vision in relation to developing sports on this island and the vision in relation to our young people was totally missing for 10 years prior to 2018. Mr. Speaker, duty-free concessions on imports for national sports organization and approved sports persons. Now, we have a situation where there's some individuals who are involved in disciplines that are not team sports, and we all know that sporting equipment is very, very expensive. And if government is to do anything to help the progress, then this is one of the things that we're looking to do to provide the duty-free concessions to all of those imports from national sports organization. Right now, Mr. Speaker, it is done in a kind of ad hoc way, where persons who are bringing in equipment will, I believe, send a letter to the National Sports Council, and then the Sports Council will act on their behalf. But we're trying to cut all of that, Mr. Speaker, by ensuring that persons who are involved in the national federations are able to do that. Mr. Speaker, the Sports Development Act, which we're expected to come after this, that will add some teeth not only to the situation of having sports in schools, but we have this really, really nefarious thing happening on island where our sports persons are going off island to represent country only to come back to this country and in some cases be fired. Mr. Speaker, it is wrong, because if we have persons who are going overseas to represent this country, I think the basic decency should be one of the pride of having an athlete working in your organization at national level instead of making life absolutely miserable for those persons. We have a young lady Mr. Speaker, who I am told at the next World Championship after 3 games will be representing this country for 175 times. 175 caps. And I have not asked, but this is Latonia Blackman, Mr. Speaker. And, you know, when we have persons that are functioning at that level on island, then courtesy and respect should be automatic coming from employers. How can we expect our athletes, whether they're doing track, whether they're doing team sports, to function when you're on the field and you're not sure when you reach back to Barbados you will have a job, or that you're threatened if you go on a next tour as a national athlete? It is expected, Mr. Speaker, that the Sports Development Act will deal with this. Mr. Speaker, the removal of gender inequalities related to granting of concessions to athletes. And we would have heard our Prime Minister a little while ago granting permission for our female cricketers who represent the West Indies to be granted the same privilege as those male cricketers who are able to come back and buy duty-free cars. Mr. Speaker, it is right. It is absolutely right for us to engage at this level. Mr. Speaker, there's several other areas in this document that I would want to touch on because, like I said, it is important for the public to get a hold of this document. We expect the type of feedback that is coming. I know there are a lot of persons who, from the time I reached the ministry, they were asking for a sports policy. My first meeting with the NFs, a gentleman indicated that he was there to hear about the national sports policy. Mr. Speaker, I mentioned before what we're doing in relation to those persons with disability. And I look a little bit at some of the objectives of this national sports policy. And there are 14 in all, but I would not want to go through all of them. I'm just pulling some, Mr. Speaker, that I think are relevant at this time. To create an environment in which sports is accessible to all and which embraces the principle of inclusion as it relates to persons with disability. To promote gender equality in all aspects of sports participation and administration. To intensify the promotion of road tennis as the indigenous national sports of Barbados. And I've mentioned before, Mr. Speaker, how we're doing that. Mr. Speaker, this sports policy took a while in coming, but it is here. And I believe that those persons who are interested in sports, those persons who believe that it is necessary for us to move forward and be one of the real shakers in the world of sports. Mr. Speaker, this is a business that is worth, I believe, the last count was about $468 billion. And why should we not be involved in the process? We have had discussions with the SJPI to see if we can use their printer to manufacture balls. There's a need for equipment in other jurisdictions. Last month, Mr. Speaker, I was engaged or involved in a process where a county in Canada, York, with 200 schools, launched road tennis. And I believe that this is something that will grow. There's another country that is also expected to launch road tennis in that particular area. The social impact of sports, Mr. Speaker. We are aware, and the honourable member for the city would be aware that sports is one of those avenues that we can change persons who are maybe leaning in a direction of deviance. And one of the things that we're expected to do, one of the things that we're expecting the sports policy to do is to trigger sports at that level where the social impact is felt in households as it relates to persons being engaged and persons being able to participate. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak about the pyramid of the policy values: inclusiveness and accessibility, fair play, respect, discipline and dedication, empowerment, and at the top of the pyramid, Mr. Speaker, as far as the values are concerned, excellence. Mr. Speaker, this is a pyramid that we fully embrace at the ministry, my team and I. This is something that we believe is within reach. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that if we are dedicated to the task, then for sure all the benefits that can be derived from sports will be felt across this country. What are some of the outcomes? What are some of the policy outcomes that we're expected as it relates to this particular sports policy? And I've mentioned before some of the outcomes: full access for persons with disability, an increase in the number of persons with disability participating in competitive and recreational sports, an increase in the number of appropriate domestic competitive structures and opportunities for athletes with disabilities, enhanced physical and mental well-being of all Barbadians, a greater level of gender equality in all levels of sports participation and administration, enhanced level of cohesion and development across communities. Mr. Speaker, this is our roadmap to moving sports to the international level. This is our roadmap to ensure that we can achieve what is set out in the document: building a more active Barbados. Mr. Speaker, this document is long in coming. I believe that going forward, it is not written in stone, Mr. Speaker, it is fluid, and we fully expect that from time to time we would come back to the document and make the necessary adjustment that is necessary. Professional sports, Mr. Speaker. I received a document from the Sports Development Unit in relation to how we should treat to moving first to semi-professional sports and hence then to move to professional sports on island. It will take some time. The truth is that it will require resources, financial resources, to trigger the semi-professional league here on island, but it is something that we believe that corporate Barbados must now come to the fore in relation to developing our young people and developing sports on island. So, Mr. Speaker, we have looked at the sports that we think may be ready for that, and we have identified a couple of them that we are having exploratory discussions to ensure that in the shortest possible time we can have some type of semi-professional sports going in Barbados. I spoke to the organizer a couple months ago in Jamaica, where there's a semi-professional basketball league. I believe 2 of our players went down. The plans are already there because the name of the tournament is already in place. It's just a matter now for us to work out the finer details in relation to that. Sports tourism, Mr. Speaker, is one of those things that is big on our agenda in the ministry, because we believe that if we build out, for example, the Wilde Gymnasium, that we, not the Wilde Gymnasium, sorry, the area of the Wilde, and the Wilde complex, that we can start, if we have the necessary facilities, to ensure that sports tourism is par for the course as it relates to having teams come from overseas and practice or to play at this location. I know that the National Sports Council are now putting 6 practice pitches at Bleming. We have had exploratory talks as well with private sector to build out the location at the Wilde area to have indoor courts that will attract teams from North America, teams from Europe to come to Barbados to engage in training during that particular time when they have their off season. So sports tourism is one of the key areas that we're looking at. We believe that, again, like I said, with all of the money that is swirling in sports, that we should be able to benefit from that avenue as far as the sports is concerned. Hosting of regional and international events, sports tourism. But we need to build out facilities. We need to have private sector come on board and share the cost, because all of us on island would benefit from that, Mr. Speaker. All of us will benefit. I've mentioned the beach culture before. The Specialist Sports Center. I was asking, Mr. Speaker, for that facility at Calama Rock that is now closed to see how best that we can build out our sports center there. I'm told that it is not available, so we now have to rethink how this is happening. I expect fully that there will be a school of sports, and we stand ready, Mr. Speaker, to engage in the process as it relates to having a specialized center, because we believe if we are to move forward, then these things as it relates to having specialists on board is important. And hence I have asked that we either have on board a sports psychologist or we retain one for when our national teams are traveling, because it is one of those critical areas in sports that we constantly overlook. We need to have a sports psychologist on board with our teams and our athletes to ensure that we not only have best practices, that we not only have a personal best, but that we make podium almost every single time that we compete, Mr. Speaker. Anti-doping. Mr. Speaker, it is par for the course now in sports that we must ensure that our athletes are clean, because testing is something that is done even outside of meets. So it is critical, absolutely critical that that is embedded in relation to how we treat to our athletes. Mr. Speaker, corruption in sports is also in this document. I don't think that we have to worry too much in Barbados. I may be speaking out of term, but I don't think that we have to worry too much in Barbados about corruption in sports. We have not yet moved to the semi-professional or professional stage. So in terms of all that is happening in match fixing and those type of things, I don't think that we have to be concerned about that for the time being. Institutional strengthening and governance, Mr. Speaker. Now, one of the areas that I am probably most concerned about is the fact that our NFs, our national federations, sometimes are not functioning at their optimum, and that is impacting, Mr. Speaker, how we move forward. Only yesterday I was home and I had a WhatsApp message from the Minister of Sports in Grenada indicating that a couple of our athletes who were traveling to that country to participate in a competition were stranded, and a couple of the athletes were supposed to be back here today to do CAPE exams. The matter was rectified. the athletes were able to get on a plane to come back yesterday. But I'm saying, Mr. Speaker, that too often our national federations are doing things in an ad hoc way, and it is impacting on what is happening on the field of play in relation to our athletes. And I'm calling here today, Mr. Speaker, for all of the national federations to rethink how they're functioning on this island, because if we are to go forward, then it means that the national federations must work hand in hand with the National Sports Council to ensure that best practices ensue, to ensure that our athletes, Mr. Speaker, are the beneficiaries of a functioning national federation. I would dare to say, Mr. Speaker, and I'm speaking subject to correction, but I think I'm 95% correct, that a month ago I made it known to the national federations that $20,000 was available to all of them who can provide information to show that there's a developmental initiative coming from that federation. I don't think to date that a single federation would have made advances to the National Sports Council to source that money. And I'm saying that in 2023, if our national federations are proactive and if our national federations are functioning, then we should have had a run on the National Sports Council for that money totaling over $1 million. Every single national federation is entitled to $20,000 if they provide the necessary information to show that they're doing a developmental project in their federation. This speaks to strengthening the National Sports Council, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that, again, we continue to be proactive, that we continue to work on the behalf of all the athletes and all of the same national federations on island, because the National Sports Council is developmental in nature, and we will continue to be developmental in nature. I know that the team there are proactive in terms of how we treat to what is coming down the tube. We're constantly looking for ways and means to enhance the product that we are delivering on island, and we can only do that if it is a case where we continue to keep evolving and to ensure that we can strengthen the product that we are offering to our athletes and the national federations. So the institutional strengthening and governance is something that is taking pride in place, Mr. Speaker, within the National Federation. Infrastructural development. And I've mentioned before what we're doing with the mini-stadia, what we're doing with the lighting. We're now in the process of ensuring that all of our pavilions across the island are fit for purpose. We're putting in place a maintenance plan to ensure that what government is accused of allowing buildings to run down and then fix them, is not the case at the National Sports Council. So we're trying our best to ensure that we have a policy in place where we have scheduled maintenance at all of our institutions. In terms of the infrastructural development, there's a need for us to ensure that all of our playing fields, I know recently because of the drought situation, and it is amazing, Mr. Speaker, that how persons on this island, some persons, I should say, would want every single time to blame every single thing on government. I was standing up and the guy was like, you know, y'all are doing a horrible job. These playing fields have cracks as big as whatever. And I asked him, are you aware that we're in a drought? And it didn't dawn on him, Mr. Speaker, that we were in a drought. So therefore, the playing fields will crack. But that is a different story, Mr. Speaker, for another time. It is almost impossible, Mr. Speaker, to satisfy all of the people. Financing and incentives, Mr. Speaker. It is a known thing that government cannot do this by itself. And from day one, when I took up my position at the ministry, I have been asking corporate Barbados to engage with us, to partner with us to ensure that our young people have a fighting chance particularly in sports. And I find it really, really difficult, Mr. Speaker, to imagine that you have well-paid marketing professionals in these organizations and they find it ever so difficult to put aside X amount of money on a yearly basis in their budget to sponsor a community-based team, to sponsor a national competition, to sponsor a particular athlete in a discipline. Mr. Speaker, it is really, really difficult that the same people who are keeping you in business, you're not finding it possible to give back and to give back in a significant way. And we had last year, Mr. Speaker, a junior road tennis competition. And a company that is now looking to grow roots in this country decided to put $40,000 behind the junior road tennis competition, $40,000. And I'm asking, Mr. Speaker, which company on island will match that particular initiative or half the initiative? Mr. Speaker, we have athletes who are struggling. If you go to any of our track meets, you will see some of the youngsters running without shoes. And it breaks my heart to believe that we're in a country, and in some cases they have companies that function within the locales of these schools that benefit from the parents who have children at these schools, and nothing is done to help those children who are involved in sports. Last year, I got a call from a friend of mine, and she said, look, I have, not she, but she have this youngster who is participating in BSAC, and he's going to make the finals, but there are no shoes. And I called my friend Marcus and I said, look, I need for you to find a pair of size 8 shoes and just get them and I will sort it out. And he called every single shop on island and there were no shoes to fit this youngster. Mr. Speaker, these are the type of things that I can't understand and I will never understand why it is, like I mentioned earlier, that companies would penalize our national athletes and these same companies cannot find it within themselves to say, well, this is $500 for a youngster at a school to buy shoes, this is $1,000 to buy uniforms to outfit a particular school in the area. It is something, Mr. Speaker, that I would want to believe is almost criminal, if I can say that in here. And I'm hoping that moral suasion will allow those persons who have businesses in this country to give back, and to give back at a level that we can see our youngsters and have some pride in terms of how they perform in their chosen area of sports. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we're on the right path at the Ministry of Sports. I have mentioned before some of the things that we're doing outside of this policy. I have mentioned that we continue at the ministry, my team and I, to be proactive in the approach as to how we treat to sports. And I believe that going forward there's a lot more to come. The sports policy is that roadmap. It is a document that we will treat to. It is a document that we will try to hit every single target that is contained in here, because at the end of the day, we want a situation where all of us have the same kind of pride when Sadia Williams crossed the finish line, It is expected. I had a meeting in recent times with a particular sporting discipline, and there was an agent there who was talking about moving our athletes to the professional level. And I mentioned to him, that is what you want, but I want championship for our island. Because, Mr. Speaker, I believe that sports can put us on the map. And if it is the case that any of our disciplines are able to move to another level, then I believe it will redound to the benefit of all of us on island. I know there's a cabinet paper that is coming at some point in time that is seeking to have athletes who are not born here be able to participate in our sports, team sports, and otherwise. Because when you compete at the regional or the regional level, you have a situation where I was involved in basketball, and I remember when I managed the team in 2015, and we were in Tortola. They had teams that were made up of almost predominantly college players who were not resident at all in the country that they're playing for. And we need to regularize that. Right now is a situation where persons who are involved in sports on island and they want to represent country, Barbados, can only do so at Carifta level. But if it is a case that they're representing country outside of that, then they need a passport. And we are looking to regularize that as well to make sure that when we compete with persons who have skill sets that will bring the others along. Mr. Speaker, I hope that during my presentation, I was able to outline some of the key factors as it relates to this green paper. I hope that those persons who are listening in corporate Barbados would have heard the plea to be involved in the process of assisting government, assisting, more importantly, our young people who are involved in sports. I have seen from being involved in the process at an intimate level what sports can do in terms of building the self-esteem for persons who are involved in team sports and otherwise. I believe it is necessary to have community-based programs because I know the benefit again of having our youngsters involved in structured activity, i.e. sports, because then the discipline that you acquire from being involved in the process when you are aware that it is not only you, but another member of the team is going to benefit from your input. I had one of my daughters were involved, and I may have mentioned it before. One of my daughters was involved in athletics, and I told her, you know, you do a very, very good 100 and 200, but somehow when you're running the relays, you seem to be a totally different person. And she indicated to me, Dad, I have 3 other people who are dependent on me to get the baton around. Mr. Speaker, this sports policy, and I'm coming at the back end. I am taking the baton across the finish line. The Honourable Member for St. George South, I believe it would have started with him, and I am now taking it across the finish line. But this, Mr. Speaker, is one of those stages in our relay as it relates to sports. And if we can move this baton around the 400 track and we can get it to the finish line, I am sure that all of us in this August chamber at some point in time will be pleased at what is happening in terms of the development of sports. I now am only the vehicle to try to get it to that place, but it is going to take all of us hand in hand, working together to make sure that this sports policy, this green paper, will benefit country as it benefits the sports fraternity on this island. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable, you got to move that the resolution pass. Honourable for City.
One of the things that it cause gets me excited, makes me a little sad. The fact that as I move around community, block to block, I see too many young, particularly linemen, that have so much talent. Was one particular occasion months ago. 7 days laying on clock. 4 out of 7 balls national sports. Whether it be cricket, long jump, other pursuits. It was then that it gave me pause. Something that moved me, that we move people through sports, primary, secondary, and national. That is why, sir, that I was excited to read this green paper and start to study our national sports policy. It is at this time, sir, I want to pause to salute the Honourable Member for St. John, the Honourable Minister of Sports, and his ministry and his team, because since taking on my latest responsibility in relation to crime prevention, I can say that the Honourable Minister has given me a type of collaborative spirit and working with that I can appreciate that redounds to the benefit of Barbados. And I want to not give him a political salute, but a genuine salute as I continue to work with the Honourable Member. The first thing that captured my eyes in this green paper, sir, is the fact that we are moving sports beyond the normal pursuit of sportswomen and sportsmen and their fans to something the policy calls sports for all. Sports for all. I love it, Mr. Speaker, sir. I love it because I believe that every Barbadian should find some way to connect with sports. And when I close this debate, sir, you will see the reason for that as I outline the benefits of sports, where everyone can be involved in some way or another. Mr. Speaker, sir, I move on to say within this policy, within this green paper, I want to add some words and approach to how we see sports. I want us to see sports for empowerment. I want us to see sports for prevention of NCDs, crime prevention. I add in all of these things on the floor, sir. I want us to understand when we talk about sports for all, the Honourable Minister mentioned it, that the disabled are included in there not only as a policy, but as an operation. It is not just words. We will make sure that it is brought to reality. Sir, I want Barbadians listening to this debate to understand, finally we have an administration that is getting serious about sports. For years, the commentary was we making sports, as the minister said. We are serious. But finally, I want us to be marked by our actions and not our words. And the actions here within this policy is saying that we are going in the right direction. We are launching the Road Tennis Federation. We are doing a number of things that signal and confirm to the public of Barbados that we are serious about sports. Mr. Speaker, one of the programs we have within my ministry is looking at value coaching and working with the Ministry of Sports, the National Sports Council, the Barbados and the other federations, the Football Association and so on, because coaches in Barbados have to understand their role as mentors and role models for our young people. And I think that within our course for certification as a coach, these are things that must be put within that training, not just the technical aspects of sports, but these things that will take a sportsman beyond the field and take him to the global atmosphere. That is what I believe we are, the direction that we are going, and that is something that I can get behind and that I can support. Mr. Speaker, I believe that we've reached a time where, by passing the baton, as the minister said in his closing, we had it from the Honourable Member, Minister for the Environment, baton pass to the Honourable Member for St. George South, baton pass to the Honourable Member for St. John. Sports, oh yeah, sports, oh I see, right. But within the ministry and the direction, and Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member, I believe that I'm speaking about, he's in the Senate now, he's in another place. But the thing is, the baton has been passed in such an efficient way that we are now here today, lined up in the correct direction to go where no administration has gone before in relation to sports. I want Barbadians to reflect on a time past, not too long ago, where national players en masse were walking around with a sponsorship. Car wash, Kate Sale, buy a drink and a take a time, sign half rate to send people to the Olympics. And I'm not saying that there's anything fundamentally wrong with that, but that cannot be the beginning, the middle, and the end of how serious we take national sports. I remember a time in Barbados. Now, we only got really serious about sports in an Olympic year. Like, if there's anything we can do in an Olympic year to make our athletes ready mentally and physically, too late was always our cry. And then we turn on the TV and we upset and we bring home gold medals. It don't happen overnight. It happens here with the policy. It happens out there with the operationalization of the policy, and it happens with the Barbadians and this chamber, sir, understanding its importance from day one. It does not happen in an Olympic year, sir. Now, sir, I am happy also to see that we've moved beyond that and we are taking the concessions, the incentives, and the exceptions serious. And again, that's for us to even go beyond that and understand what a 21st century cutting-edge sports policy and operations is about. I want to salute a youngster, a teenager from the same Green Park Lane, who came to me with a proposal, and I ain't talk too much about it. I don't want nobody. I don't want to thief the idea, but take up the idea. Let me put it that way, to be more parliamentary language. And he has something called Nexa. And he's a teenager, you know, sir. And what he has developed is an app and a system that provides digital sports CVs, so that managers from around the world can look and see this person's pursuits, their records, their height, their records that they've made throughout their career in a digital way, with some snapshots and videos of replays of some of their greatest pursuits, as opposed to a hard copy. And that is when I think about 21st century sports, it is those types of initiatives that I am talking about, sir. It is those types of initiatives I want to see in the final policy. And that is why I'm adding my voice here this morning, sir. Sir, one of the other things that came to my mind is that back in the 90s, I remember a gentleman. Some of you will call him Fingal. Some of you will call him Mac. I call him Sir. Because he, back in the 90s, I remember, he had this thing, these VHFs, and that didn't stand for very, very high-tech systems. I talk about the tape. He would put them in, and he would rewind, and he would rewind, and he would get the athletes to sit down and watch the movements of their opponents. I remember it like yesterday. So when people wanted to know why the Griffins, why the Lord School was winning all the time, it wasn't very high technology, but what it was us understanding strategy, dedication, motivation, and most importantly, discipline. Discipline, sir. Now, I believe that when we look at these things and we reflect on them, we must, as an administration, to do best by the people that we serve, ask ourselves, what is the best way to implement and lay out the policy which we debate and we expose as our own? How do we convert our thought into our walk? And sir, I am a little disappointed this morning to hear of thoughts still of persons seeking to be released from employment, being fired for participating in national duty. The minister was afraid to say it is almost criminal, but I'm going to back him and say it is like criminal activity, sir. Because I believe that we cannot be afraid to say that on a national level, if we are taking sports serious, and by the end of this debate, sir, I am hoping that members of this chamber and members of this country understand why I feel so passionate about this, and why it is important that those employees should be A, released without any problems, or B, not even have to be released in the first place, because I'm not afraid to call the word academy. Because for our high-intense, high-performing athletes, we must be able to put them in an academy, because the people that they are competing with on the world stage are not being released from no cement plant, no brewery anywhere, or accounting firm. They live, eat, drink, sleep, play sports. And that is why that must be a direction that we are willing to go in. I know of the work of CONCACAF and FIFA they're doing with the BFA in terms of building their own academy, but I believe that we cannot get to these things overnight, but we must be able to partner with federations and associations to be able to use their facilities, whether it be the university or the West Indies, the Football Association, or whoever, sir. That is how we get to the promised land. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, and that will be a step in the right direction. Now, one of the other things I want to underscore is something that the minister mentioned about this thing about corporate social responsibility. Only Sunday I say that we need to have some citizen social responsibility, because citizens have got to seek out companies that support our community and sports endeavors, because it supports the society. It supports the businesses in the long term, in the direct and indirect. So I believe that companies throughout the year, and not in an Olympic year, should be asking themselves, what is the most, what is the maximum, not what is the minimum I can do to contribute. So if you can do more than $500, do the $500 plus. Don't do the minimum, do the maximum. And stay tuned to the end, because, again, I'm reminding you, sir, that at the end, I want to speak about the overall benefits of sports to the individual and collectively to the society. Mr. Speaker, sir, moving on. The minister spoke about sports tourism, and that is something, again, that I put my 100% support behind, because we know that we have the potential in this country to operate at a global level. We have the branding, we have the peace, we have the weather, we have the facilities in some respect, and we had some of the biggest names on this island before. Anybody remember Ken Block? We remember Lewis Hamilton. We remember people that came here that we can use to market Barbados and engage in sports tourism in a way that is not just an ism, but it is something that can bring tremendous benefit to the nation through increased arrivals, through spending, sir, through exposure to increase arrivals and spending even more. That is what we are talking about, sir. A serious debate. The other thing that we have is this thing called 365 days of sunshine. Unless there is a leap year, and then you get 366. But where do the top athletes train during winter? Some of them build their indoor facilities, but do you want to come and train in 70 degrees in the shade, in a beautiful country with beautiful sea breeze, coming across the east and the west, the north and the south, sir? That is what you want. Barbados is the place for you. So, sir, the Honourable Member for St. John, I am giving you my fullest support in relation to building out the sports tourism. The Honourable Member for St. Michael, West Central, I believe as well. I am giving the support for the sports tourism, unreservedly, sir. Full support. Moving on, sir. The final major point I want to talk about is this idea of revenue earning within sports. So I believe that this is the biggest problem in sports in Barbados. In moving around my constituency, and particularly doing some reasonings and moving around other constituencies, I remember last year, late November, I believe it was in the parish of St. Lucie. And I remember speaking to some youngsters and some coaches, a little session that was set up, and they were talking about the fact that, you know, sports is just a run-bout thing for them. After you run around and you reach a certain age, and you have to bring home the bride, what does sports do for you up to that time? But this, sir, policy and green paper speaks about that. How do we introduce more revenue into sports so that a youngster getting involved in sports, they don't have to get involved in it, become really good at it, and at 16 or 18 get out of it because they have to bring home an income or they have to be able to support themselves and their family. Because sports is entertainment, and entertainment is a billion-dollar industry. So the question is, and the answer must be, that when we're looking at the policy, the final policy, that included in that must be a major plank on how we get the revenue in sports. Sir, let me talk about this. Let me talk about it. Now, there are countries that are way larger than Barbados, and they do not depend on gate receipts. Because gate receipts is not where it's at. Gate receipts says icing on the cake, gravy on the rice. That is what gate receipts represent. And a small country like Barbados, we cannot depend on gate receipts. It just will not do it. So what we've got to look at, sir, is things that the other countries that are successful at this, what they look at, which is TV rights. I went to, it was Hope in the Ghetto table tennis match, and I looked at that match, and I could see this on Sky Sports. I could see this on ESPN, the court, pretty. And I said to myself, this is something that we should be marketing to the world. Because every match went down to about 2 or 3 points. It said, no, the edge of the seat. At some points, you got to get it because the edge of the seat cut in. And that is what I am talking about. How do we market to the world? I think a major part of this is in marketing. One of the things I want to salute is the Honourable Member for the Minister for Industry. He have a guy in his ministry, an innovator. And I remember years ago, utilized one of my youth groups to build out this beach cricket. And then he brand the bats, he patent the bats, and then sell them. That's understanding how to bring revenue through innovation into sports. So you must be able to see the connections and connect all of the dots, sir. The other thing that the minister spoke about that I want to give my full support to is the fact that we need to build more semi and professional leagues. That is one of the ways that we can get and monetize sports for the sports men and women of this country. One of the other ways is we can tap into, and we've done it already, we're doing it all right now, but we may need to do it on a greater level, is utilizing things like the Lotto and the Cultural Fund and these different things that say that they support youth sports and culture. So let them support youth, sports, and culture. It is simple, sir, not rocket science. So that is another thing that I want us to understand. Our very own Rihanna, I want to use her as an example. I remember when I was following her and her pursuits and her success. All salute to her. But I remember that she used to be associated with the word million, with an M. A few millions. I started following her when she reached about 30 million. I said, good for her, good for her. We need more Barbadians to jump on that train. But what I want this house to understand, sir, it is not through just doing the music that she was able to get to the millions and beyond the millions. You see, when she got into endorsements and fashion, that is how our very own Rihanna get into the billions with a B. So the sports is not only about the physical aspect of it, there's a business and marketing aspect of it, sir, that ensures that our citizens can get to billion with a B. And that is something I want to see within the policy, but also within the operationalization of the policy, sir. Sports is entertainment. Entertainment is billions of dollars, sir. So now our very own Rihanna makes about 70 million a year and is now valued at, I see different things, between 1.4 to 1.7, in line with Michael Jordan, who's been doing it much longer, but she got into the fashion and the endorsements earlier. Now, in ending, I want to end on 2 points. One, I want to end by doing my responsibility and my duty in calling on the National Sports Council and the Ministry of Sports to ensure that the pastures and the lights, because we got to get the basics right first, right? And the programs, the community centers and stuff, in the city of Bridgetown and throughout all constituencies, but in the city of Bridgetown, sir, and I say Michael North in that he asked for the little endorsement too, but I will see him later with the invoice. Yes, that they are taken care of, because we got to make sure, sir, that we get the fundamentals right. You can't be running out there and twisting an ankle and breaking a foot. You can't be out there playing cricket and can't see the ball and lose because you can't make the runs because you can't see the ball, sir. You must have proper lights installed.
Honourable, I think, sir, if you're speaking about some...
Sir?
Honourable,
Speaking generally, sir.
no, I thought if you're making mention of a specific event, I don't think it has anything to do with the legend. It's something to do with the capability and ability of the persons that were assigned to your team.
So I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I'm speaking in general,
yeah, but
all fields across all constituencies.
I just thought it would bring it to your attention that there may be a different aspect to it.
Sir,
And I think I remember very vividly that the same minister was also on your team.
Yeah, I had a match
think
and
so.
they did have the Honourable Minister on my
I
team,
was just
sir.
trying to recollect, and I don't think very much came up the minister and your team. Continue, I remember.
Sir, I agree, and I follow the chair. But I will say that the guilty runneth when no man pursueth, but the innocent is as bold as a lion. I was speaking generally about all fields and all lights across this country. Anyhow, sir, I want to close on the second point, though, and that's the benefits of sports. And I want to list them in such a way, and it's just a sample, it's not an extensive list, and it's not exhaustive. Sports helps our people, not just young people, but people generally, in building accountability, responsibility, dedication, leadership, teamwork, problem solving. Therefore, it helps with academics, and it also helps with scholarships. It helps with self-esteem and building confidence, something that too many Barbadians lack, in my humble opinion, sir. It helps with stress management, mental and social well-being. We talk a lot about mental health in this time, particularly in the social media world. Time management, boosting friendships and relationship building. And sir, that is just a sample of the personal benefits of sports. I want to close now on the collective national good and benefits of sports, sir. It builds good national values. It adds to national unification, unity, and togetherness. You know, when Barbados got to play a match, we ain't care who party we from, what parish we from, constitution, you know who we backing? We backing Barbados. It builds that wrap yourself around the flag feeling, and that is a national good. It improves overall education. It builds national role models. It creates history and identity as a people. It exposes nationals to the world and helps them to expand their horizon. And sir, we spoke about the economic benefit, where within this very policy we identify sports of having a value between $489 to $614 billion. And I believe it is even greater than that, sir. When you add all things and take all things into consideration, I believe that the only thing that I could do, sir, is to say that I support this policy, and it is a policy that I'll be keeping my eye on and adding my contribution at every step of the way, so that Barbados can boast one day of having one of the greatest sports policies and national sports operations, not only in the Caribbean, sir, but across the world. I am obliged, sir. Thank you.
Honourable St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this green paper led by the member for St. John. And let me say, Mr. Speaker, to the country that this member is doing a wonderful job in that ministry, and I want to congratulate him here. Mr. Speaker, Nelson Mandela, I think when he came out of prison, he made a statement. I think it was Australia playing South Africa at the time in rugby. And he made a statement that sports has the potential to unite the world. And that statement, that slogan, resides with me up to this day, and more so when I had responsibility for that wonderful ministry of youth, sports, and community empowerment that I hold dear to my heart, youth and sports and community empowerment. A powerful ministry, and one member for the city that can solve and that will solve most of the social and health challenges that we have among our young people in this country. And while I'm not going to go into the details of the policy, there are a few statements that I wish to make as I stand here to give full support to this green paper. And Mr. Speaker, this work could not have reached this stage without the support of the officers within the Ministry of Sports and National Sports Council. And it is here that I want to salute the senior sports officer, who I can see clearly, I won't call his name, and also the director of the National Sports Council, who I know both had hands in this policy, and the permanent secretary as well, past and present permanent secretary. Because the iterations going and coming, and I know the member did not speak to that, but I also want to salute the members of this cabinet who saw it fit to critique and send back, go and come again, wheel and come again, Dwight, wheel and come again, member for St. John, because this cabinet recognizes the importance of sports to the development of this country and to the development of and well-being, health and well-being. And indeed, where I will go later, the whole aspect of creating employment for the ordinary man and the ordinary woman. And I know there were certain disciplines that were identified as the member so well articulated in his speech this morning, the member for St. John. But the member for the city, I thought that you were going to go where I am going, to that lovely discipline of horse racing. And you know, when we were developing the sports policy, I reached out to the member, and the member ably provided support to what I will mention briefly here. And why I mention horse racing, because, and I'm going to use horse racing as the example to show where we came from, where we are going. And sport is no longer being treated by this government for recreational value alone. And we are focusing on the health and the social benefits and the employability of young people in this country, in this area. And I want to mention just a few. That sport and discipline of horse racing has within its arsenal roughly around 20 various different subsections as it relates to employment. And I'm using it as an example to show you the value of sports to this economy. I'm going to just mention a few. And remember, you recall this, the correspondence some 2.5 years ago during COVID and during the ashfall. I think we had this communication during the ashfall then. When we looked at the various job opportunities within that discipline of horse racing, and Mr. Rowe can tell you what I'm speaking about as well, and director. Exercise riders, stable hands, grooms, stud hand, thoroughbred trainer, farrier horse health and well-being. You know what a farrier is? The persons who put the shoes on the horses. That's a farrier. That's a discipline in itself. A horse can't run without its shoes. Bloodstock agent, race caller, race course manager workers, horse breaker, pre-trainer, barrier attendant. Then you have those persons who are drivers, freight, and transporters. And I mentioned stable hand. And I can go on and on and on and on, Mr. Speaker, because thoroughbred trainers, because you look and you see who are dominating horse racing internationally in this world. I said internationally in this world. Bajans, as trainers, our jockeys leave here and they go away and they do exceptionally well. That's right. They return, provide money to their families, and we know they contribute to this economy in a meaningful way. Foreign exchange generation. And I'm just using the horse racing as an example to show you that if we begin to truly monetize this discipline of sports, and I use the word monetize it, in terms of these job opportunities that we have for young, ordinary Barbadians. And member for St. John, we had this conversation, and I will go further because most of the persons who are interested in horse racing tell me where they're from. At that level, tell me where they're from. The member for St. Michael South and I had the same conversation. The member for St. Michael South Central and I had the same conversation. Most of these young men, and I heard the member for St. Michael South Central say to me there, when she goes in her constituency, some section of it, she knows when horse racing is going on, even if she doesn't hear it on the air because the streets are empty. And I use this as an example, member for St. John, to thank you because what you have articulated this morning in your green paper speaks to the monetization of sports and creating employment opportunities for the ordinary man. And it is there I want to focus on these macro results coming out of your green paper, more so than listing all of what you are or repeating what you just went through. And I go further into manufacturing. Some persons may not like to hear this, but I'll begin with road tennis, but I will end off on cricket in terms of manufacturing. Stephen watching me, because Stephen knows me very well. Merchandising in road tennis. Our only indigenous sport is road tennis, and I thank you, member, for carrying on the good work. And I'm not going to politicize road tennis, member for St. George North, because the former administration did a lot of work on road tennis, and it would be remiss of me to stand here to say, yeah, we're going to get there. For me to stand here and say that only this administration did work on road tennis, because that same member, and that's what this government is about, an inclusive government, that same member receives calls from me when I was Minister of Sport. And I had conversations with him in the presence of the senior officer responsible for sports, discussing certain aspects of road tennis. So this government, we are not petty. We recognize that prior to us coming into office, work started in a very important area that is dear to the citizens of this country and our only indigenous sport. So why must I be naive and pat myself on the chest to say I started it? And the former member for St. Philip West, who now sits in the other chamber, he did work on road tennis as well. So we had collective responsibility for road tennis, because we recognize as an indigenous sport, we have to put our hands and our heads together to make this sport one of the world's most attractive sports. And when we do that, we put Barbados on the map. So merchandising as it relates to the sport of road tennis is something that I believe, and I know it is in the green paper. And if I know the member for St. John very well, I know that he will focus on it. And the good member for St. Michael North, it falls under his remit to also assist with us exporting the manufacturing aspect of road tennis, the balls, the rackets. And I know there are some very artistic and skillful workmen in this country who are manufacturing road tennis rackets. And I want to see them going across the length and breadth of the globe. Everywhere that road tennis now is being marketed and advertised or being promoted, I expect that with the personnel we should be carrying 1,000 rackets and selling. Businesses in this country, similar to cricket, where the England and now where the English and now the Indians, they have taken over manufacturing willows, bats. And I have a difficulty with that. I'm going to get there shortly, because I strongly believe that this country has what it takes to become the best manufacturer for sporting goods and equipment. Do not let the opportunity for us to cement who we are as it relates to road tennis pass us. And I'm sending this message because I know where I came from. Road tennis has to be managed not only by government. Yes, we create the policy framework and the Sports Development Act, and the sports policy will come. We have the green paper. But we have to allow, the same way we have the Barbados Cricket Association, they have overall responsibility for the development of cricket in this country, and the Barbados Football Association for football in this country. there must be a Road Tennis Association that has to get its act together. Government will support. Government will assist. We have created the framework and the policies. For you, we have the green paper. But the association must get its act together. You know, in this country, there's more politics in sports than there is in this room. And that's the problem that is killing sports in this country. I ain't come to talk too much on the policy. I come to support you, member for St. John. You did an excellent job. I ain't repeating nothing you said. We have to forget the politics in sports, or else the West Indies cricket team will not be playing in future World Cups. This territorial divide in cricket has to stop. I am part of a chat, and Ray said does not allow me to make certain pronouncements and comments. But it pains me some of the comments that I see in the chat. In a sport that we dominated for years and years and years, Sir Garfield Sobers, Sir Wes Hall, Sir Charlie Griffith, Sir Gordon Grinner, Sir Desmond Haynes, the most honorable, Desi, and others from across the region, Sir Viv Richards, Michael Holden, Courtney Waltz, Kurt Lee, and I can go on and call the list, all of them. This region and this country should be manufacturing willows. We should be manufacturing willows. We should be going to India and going to England and talking about the best willows made there. No member for St. John. We have to see ourselves as leaders in these disciplines and perform as leaders, innovate, create. We should be selling. When I look at IPL, and I love cricket, I see Shuman Gill batting with a Seat bat. That's a brand, a company. We should be batting with Sir Garfield Sobers bats, and Trident and Guerlain bats. I'm talking regionally now. These are the icons of cricket. People should be running to these shores to get these bats. But we find ourselves sitting down and measuring in the minor as it relates to sports development. Who should be playing? Why this body ain't playing? You know that there's a saying, and I'm not criticizing the BCA. I am a proud member of the Barbados Cricket Association for years now. A proud member. But we have a lot of work to do in that area. So I spoke to manufacturing, not only in road tennis and in cricket, merchandising, more merchandising, but I also wish to speak to high performance. Member for St. John touched on it. Member for the city touched on it. I will touch on it because until we truly understand what is high performance, and until we truly begin to spend the money in the areas that matter, the areas that can truly see high performance coming to our shores. And while I am on cricket and I will go into other areas, biomechanics. And I'm asking the question not to the minister nor the members of the National Sports Council or the ministry, but I am asking the question to those associations that are responsible for cricket development. Where is our biomechanics in this country? And I heard the member spoke to that man also that trained me how to play forward and kept my elbow upright if I want the ball to go to the covers, where to push my elbow and not to use too much right hand. All that makes me and he never had any fancy biomechanics machine, and I'm talking about we call him Macfinger. I was the chairman of the sports council. Was my form teacher in 1-4. I took to cricket, and you know, I went through large school playing cricket, 1st to 6th. But he never had the opportunity to bring any biomechanics machine to the large school. But what he did to watch the other players, he videoed players and he watched how they move and everything with precision. And like you mentioned, discipline, it was also a part of the school curriculum. Huh? Discipline, trust me. Discipline, it was. But he utilized the art of videos to allow large school to win titles in athletics, in basketball, in cricket, in football. And I'm saying to the organizations and to university who has probably the first biomechanics machine, we now need to create centers of excellence, not only at university, but we need to create centers of excellence across this country. It would create employment opportunities, and we have persons who are training at the tertiary level in this area. And what it does, it helps you fine-tune the human body within sports. If you are a javelin thrower, then the biomechanics will show you the technique in maximizing your throw. If you are a bowler, the biomechanics will show you how to generate speeds like none other. How to prevent yourself from fracturing your back or stress fractures. That is what the biomechanics and high performance is all about. That's why India and Australia and England are doing so well. I want to ask the question, why Barbados and West Indies cricket, they're so good at age 15, on the 15th and on the 19th, and then after senior level, when we get to senior level, we don't do so well. And it's not because of no attitudes either. It is because of the technology that the other countries are employing that we are not employing. We are busy fighting among ourselves, the territories, with respect to who should head cricket and who shouldn't head cricket, and a lot of politics in the cricket. So when a man doesn't reach on the BCA board, he or she sees it fit to tear it down, rather than providing the necessary support. I'm just speaking on cricket, but it's a broad analogy with respect to sport and discipline. Now, I also support the call for businesses, and I said this eons now. Businesses need to support our players more. You know, I stood up at the AstroTurf with the president of the BFA, Mr. Harris, and I had the opportunity when I was Minister of Sport to speak to the under-19 football team, I think, at the time they were training. And there was a young man, member for St. John, who said he couldn't come to training. He was so devastated when he came to watch the young ones play, that he was working and he could not get the opportunity to train, so he could not make the team. His employers would not give him the opportunity to train. And I think this is wrong. I think this is wrong. These young men and young women, all you're doing is denying them the opportunity to become global citizens and to earn a living. Sports is $1 billion industry. And while we go to university and we study engineering and law and medicine, show me those lawyers and those engineers and those doctors who make more money than basketballers in this world, or footballers in this world. Show me them. Bring them to me. LeBron, Michael Jordan, Ronaldo, Messi. These guys are billion-dollar sportsmen. Usain Bolt. Come, men and women, yes, of course. Men and women. Men and women. And I'm saying to you, the time has come. And I am glad that the Green Paper speaks to a sports economy. The Green Paper also speaks to the whole aspect of beach sports, tourism, you know, and we can utilize these same icons that I spoke about, whether it is in athletics, is in cricket. We have an icon in road tennis, and I think he's the world's best road tennis player, and we are not promoting him enough. The young man called Venom, we should be putting him all over the world. The world's best road tennis player. He is. And these are the things we have to do to market in tourism, in sport, merchandising. Member for St. Michael North. And I'm passionate about road tennis because these are some of the things that I believe will put Barbados on the map further. We are on the map already, and we are doing exceptionally well in the eyes of the globe. But these are things that will give the ordinary man, you know, when the average man from Bush Hall or the average man from the Ivy, Ruby Black, Grand Boy, see Venom picture on CNN News, he can say, I have the opportunity to become the world's best road tennis player. That's what motivates the young man. I heard the member touch on it. Member for the city, he touched on it. That's what motivates these young people. So we need now to take this and run with it and allow the world to see that Barbados has the best in sporting disciplines. You know, one of the things that I am happy about, if there's one thing that I can say that I did there at the National Sports Council, was to take the rooms that we have as leisure rooms, and we turn one of the rooms into the President's Suite, which was always there. But we made it a real President's Suite. And then we turned the other room into what? The Cigar-Free Sobers Suite. You know, I took a gentleman who's working on behalf of this government. He loves cricket, and he wanted to socialize with me. I didn't take him to Sandy Lane. I didn't take him to Ties. Those are places that I go. I don't do too much in Sandy Lane. Occasional, you know, anniversary luncheon or something. But I love Ties. Ties is my favorite restaurant. I didn't take him there. I took him to the Cigar-Free Sobers Suite. I called the director of sports and I tell him, I have a gentleman who is in this country who loves cricket, and he is a fan of Cigar-Free Sobers, and I took him there. What that is, he took 6 pictures and he sent to Australia. He sent pictures to South Africa. I have some here in my phone of that suite, and persons are saying when they come to this country, they want to go there. Now, I am a marketer. That is simple marketing, having spent some time with him, having a little beverage. That is what it was about. Mr. Speaker, finding a place that I can drink a single malt. And look what happened there. So I am saying to you, the legends, we should focus on upgrading the profile of our legends, the facility, because the history of cricket worldwide, you cannot communicate the history of cricket and the stars in cricket across the globe without recognizing Barbados and without recognizing the West Indies. These are the opportunities we have in this green paper that this green paper speaks to, and I know we will do it. Now, community sports. How much more time I have, Mr. Speaker?
You're very limited.
Okay. Community sports. Last but by no means least, the most powerful. You heard the ministry? The Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. Last but by no means least, the community sporting programs. The member for St. John, and I support you wholeheartedly, mentioned it in his introduction. Community sports is probably one of the most powerful aspects of this policy, in that community sports, most of the stars that I just called, Sir Garfield Sobers started playing cricket in the Bayland. It was community sports. And if you go across the globe, Venom, I keep calling the man Venom. I don't like that. What's the real name again? Mark Griffith. He started in a community. Gregory Laluk Goodworth, footballer, the facility at St. George Secondary, named after him, started juggling a breadfruit in Crawford Road. Sir Garfield Sobers, that I mentioned in the Bayland. And these are persons who went on to represent the country and who made money from sport. Yes, Sir Garfield didn't make much because in his time, they were not paying sportsmen and cricketers like they're doing now. But within communities, we have to ensure, and I heard the member mention it, we have to ensure that we revive cricket. We have to make sure that we revive football. And I said to Mr. Harris at the BFA, I know you're doing several tournaments at the AstroTurf, and I'm now seeing the knockout rounds of the BFA season playing across the communities, and I love that. Because we should reserve the AstroTurf for special matches. If you want to play the league games there, no problem. But I believe that football should be played across the length and breadth of this country like it did before. In Silver Sands, in the Pine, in the Bayland, in Spikestone, Half Moon Fort, Crab Hill, St. Catharines, Haynesville, Spikestone, St. John, in the Ivy Blenheim, Rommel down by your ground, one of the best grounds in the country, Isolation, member for St. Peter. At the Glebe, a nice facility that we just built at the Glebe. These sports, this is the only way we can solve some of our problems. This is the only way we can recognize young men and young women as potential global sportsmen and women. And I'm going to give you an example. Yours truly is still the president of Elton Sports and Social Academy for the past 6 years. And one of my closest friends who passed through this chamber told me not to do it. He said it is going to take too much time. And I said to him, no, I will do it. Because you know why? These young men and women are dependent on me. I started a tournament, and I'm just using me as an example. I started that tournament called the Rondell Pollard Memorial Tournament, and I spoke with this in this chamber before. That tournament started out some 12 years ago. And the young men now that are playing the Line Pelican and who won the David Thompson Memorial Tournament twice, and who are finalists in the Line Pelican, no, not the Line Pelican, in the BFA knockout division, Premier League, beaten by yours truly, member for St. Michael's South Central Team Wales. These young men could not play in the first team in the BFA division, but they showcased themselves and their talent in the Rondell Pollard Memorial Tournament as young 14 and 15-year-old guys, tutored by Gregory Laluk Goodrich, who played with them. And now these are all big men. Some are at national trials, some are playing for Barbados. One of these players was the CONCACAF MVP recently. And I'm saying that is what community sports does to these young people to solve the issue of nothing to do, something to do, crime. I don't want to, I hate to use that word, but member for the city, he knows that. Obesity among young people, boys and girls, critical. That's what exercise does, sports. Community sports addresses several issues within families as well. So not only economic, but social and health challenges we will address by community sports. And I want to thank you, member for St. John, again, for recognizing within your green paper that community sports is indeed fundamental, not only for us developing the young people, but to building a good nation that persons see as a sporting nation, not only an economic value nation, but a sporting nation. We can grow our economy, but if we grow sportsmen, this economy will triple in a very short space of time. Now, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member, you have 2 more minutes.
Mr. Speaker, this issue of female cricket, we need some more attention within the schools, and I heard the whole aspect of softball mentioned. And I think the value of softball within the school system should not be underscored. Most of the talented female cricketers started out playing softball cricket. And I want us to focus on that area in our schools with our females, because it is very difficult to navigate a softball. You have to have technique to bat a softball and to bowl a softball, and also to field a softball. And if we are truly to produce more world-class cricketers like Haley Matthews and Miss Selman, that's her name, we need to reintroduce softball cricket in our schools so our young girls can indeed become attracted to the sports. Mr. Speaker, I close by saying it is clear that this government is not making sport with sports. The fact that we have placed lights across most of the playing fields of this country, the fact that we have invested thousands of dollars to make sure that persons after work can indeed exercise on playing fields in the village, which is in rural and urban Barbados, is testimony to how we value sport. The fact, Mr. Speaker, that we can spend money on grading fields as a government, because I heard the member for the city trying to use the example for his loss yesterday, on Sunday, but that has nothing to do with the quality of the field. But we have spent money as a government. When we came to office, we recognized that Queen's Park, Spartan Cricket Ground, one of the most famous grounds in this country, needed work. Because when cricketing icons travel this country, they go to places like Empire, they go to places like Spartan, they go to places like Pickwick. Now they have isolation to go to, and they have Malvern that looks exceptionally well. And they have the Glebe. And they have St. John culture. So, Mr. Speaker, it is clear as I close that this government is serious about sports. And I want to thank the officers within the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment for the focus they have brought to this green paper, and to ensuring that soon from now we will not only have a sports policy, but we will have a sports development act. And I will sit down, but I forgot to mention the role of coaches. We need to spend more money on our coaches. We need to send our coaches overseas to learn the best of whatever sports there is, the best practices in the world, exchanges not only with Cuba, with lawn tennis and boxing, but we have other areas we can go to, India, Australia. And I believe once we invest in our coaches and we carry on along the path that we are carrying on, Barbados will become the best place to develop young men and women sportsmen and women as global citizens. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable member for Michael, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 3 p.m.
Question is that this honorable chamber be suspended until 3 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 3 p.m.